provided by Lindblad Special Expeditions. The weather on departure is typical.
Oh, this is beautiful. It's Oregon sunshine. And as you've probably heard, people in Oregon don't tan, they rust.
Our captain, native Portlander Carrie Duke.
If I took my shoes off right now, you could see the webs between my toes.
Over the next 7 days, Captain Duke will pilot the Seabird 450 miles upstream, a voyage that would be impossible in a larger ship.
We can go almost anywhere.
But this is a different river than the one Lewis and Clark followed to the sea. Damn different. Today, the Columbia and its tributaries form the largest hydroelectric power system in the world, power that's come at a cost. The Pacific Northwest's most abundant resource, the salmon, has been devastated. Efforts have been made to reverse the decline. At each dam, there's a fish ladder to help the fish back up the stream to their spawning grounds, and someone like Merle Blythe to count them.
Whoa, he's a big...
To an outsider, you sit here for 8 hours.
That's right.
Watching that window.
That's right, counting every fish that goes through.
You've got to count everyone. What if one backs up?
We have to subtract it from our count. Isn't he pretty?
Merle Blythe counts each and every salmon that passes through the McNary Dam.
When people ask what you do, what's your job, what do you say?
I'm a scientific technician, #1. That's what we are.
You don't say, I'm a fish counter.
No, we want to sound important. Whoa.
But you don't get bored.
Oh, yes, sometimes I do. Then I think about, well, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this, you know? So you might just well sit here and count fish.
The Seabird's inbound below Moonax.
As the Seabird makes its way through the Columbia Gorge, we meet the local giant. 11,000-foot Mount Hood stands watch over Oregon orchard country, a fertile valley heavy with pears and apples.
Now you want some ice cream? Oh, why not?
And somebody's got to do something with all that fruit. Fortunately for the passengers of the Seabird, the good folks at the Parkdale Grange have a way with pies. I couldn't pass up the Marionberry pie.
What is Marionberry?
Marionberry is a cross between a boysenberry and a blackberry.
One taste tells me this pie has no political agenda.
It's great. So there's no connection with D.C.
No.
This is Oregon pie.
Just a few hours upstream, we've left the rain shadow of the Cascade Mountains and find ourselves in an altogether different country, the desert-like East.
They had no idea what was out here.
Historian Jim Gary is below, giving a talk on Lewis and Clark. He says history books can take you only so far.
And you can't begin to envision different parts of the trip without seeing the country. There are some things that books do well, and there are other things that it don't hurt to be on the ground.
Getting passengers on the ground is central to the Lindblad experience. Whether it's exploring the Antarctic, the Baja Peninsula, or the Galapagos, the emphasis is on adventure, discovery, and learning. Up to 11 naturalists can be aboard their small ships.
You get lots of educational activities, very informed naturalists and geologists and other scientific people. You learn a lot. You learn an immense amount.
Hiram Maxim and his wife Marty are from Lyme, Connecticut.
We're not the glitz type people. We want to get off the boat and experience, you know, the areas that we're in.
As we drift through the wine country of eastern Washington, it seems only fitting to toast the occasion with a wine tasting below.
This is another Oregon Chardonnay.
That's right.
Tomorrow, we descend into Hell's Canyon, the deepest gorge in North America. For tonight, we'll just have to make do with this piece of heaven alongside the Columbia Plateau.
Coming up later, she survived rotaries. Can she loop the lock? Coming up next, going to hell on a jet boat. And
Seahawk Dam.
The dam controversy.
Snake River, as the Seabird enters the twin ports of Clarkston, Washington, and Lewiston, Idaho. Here we hop on a jet boat and descend into Hell's Canyon.
I've been sharing Hell's Canyon with people for 25 years and just decided to make it my home.
Our pilot, Mike Luther, knows the neighborhood pretty well.
I have the only piece of private property in the wild section of the river up there.
Luther's nearest neighbor is a 2-hour boat ride away. Now, I take it you got a little bit of the hermit in you to get away from people this far out.
Well, you know, you might think you're going to get away from people, but I think I get more company up there in the canyon than I did when I lived in town.
Hell's Canyon is geologist heaven. You like your work?
I do. I love it. This is where I get to be.
Jonathan Cooley is the geologist aboard the Seabird. He points out that the Grand Canyon may be steeper, but it's not deeper than Hell's Canyon.
It is the deepest canyon in the United States in that from river level to the highest ridge outside the canyon is somewhere in the order of 7,000 or 8,000 feet, and the Grand Canyon being 5,000 feet or so.
We return to the seaport of Lewiston, Idaho. Just how does a small city hundreds of miles from the Pacific call itself a seaport? Well, the dams have tamed the Columbia and Snake Rivers, making them a major route of commerce. Over half of this country's exported wheat is barged down these rivers. But concerns about the decline of the wild salmon have made what was once considered a crackpot idea a real political possibility: the removal of dams.
There are dams coming down all over the country, and because the economics of keeping the dams in just doesn't make sense.
Dave Morick is with American Rivers, a group calling for the breaching of 4 Snake River dams. Polls show that public sentiment seems to be mounting against the dams.
If you ask them the question of whether or not they'd rather save salmon or pay a few more dollars in their electric bill, the answer is overwhelmingly in favor of the salmon.
And that's got Roger and Mary Dye worried.
People that want to make these draconian moves don't have anything to lose. And we have everything to lose.
A third-generation wheat farmer, Roger once thought he'd try something else, but he came back to the family farm in Pomeroy, Washington.
Why did you come back and root yourself here and make this your life?
Well, I was kind of surprised that I was in love with the land more than I thought I was. And I was tied to it, and I didn't want to leave.
If the 4 Snake River dams are removed, the Dyes say the increased cost of getting their wheat to market might put them under.
I think the big picture for us here is that we're a farming community. It's not just Roger and Mary Dye. These little communities are pretty unique little treasures because our culture has become so mobile, and here we have an area where families stay together for generations, and every family that has to leave the farm, they're lost out of our community, they're lost forever.
Save our dams, hear our plea. Save our dams, just let them be.
Wiley Gustafson from the town of Dusty, Washington, splits his time between touring and tending his beef cattle.
Built with sweat and blood to serve the working man, save our dams. Hopefully a few people will hear the song and maybe make them think about it in a little bit different light. And make a little room for a hard-working man.
Our next ticket is 4 meat, 2 veg.
Back aboard the Seabird, no one's working harder than Chef Earl Thomas.
Are people eating lighter than they used to on cruises? They don't want constant food?
They start off light, and then it kind of grows. And by the end of the trip, I get orders for doubles and combos and, you know, side orders, you know. And it's not for me, it's for my husband or it's for my wife, you know. But can I say, as long as they love it, I love it.
Tomorrow on Chronicle, fakes, frauds, and forgeries. Coming up next, kiteboarding craze.
Extremely easy and safe with lessons and the right equipment.
Anchor at the mouth of the Palouse River, and passengers head off to explore the canyon in their vessel of choice.
You know, I keep coming back to this area because it's a real combination of so many things. Scenic beauty, certainly, and all kinds of history, highlighted by Lewis and Clark and the unbelievable feat that they accomplished.
Larry Prusson, expedition leader on the Seabird.
All my friends are naturalists, and they ask, how do I get a job? And I tell them to wait until I die, and then there'll be an opening. So.
There's a belted kingfisher. Did you hear that rattling sound?
Botanist Sarah Jennings makes her home in Watertown, Massachusetts, when she's not naturalizing for Lindblad.
It's really different with the desert and the rainforest out here just right next to each other.
The Seabird will lock through 8 dams each way on this voyage. Chief Mate Marcy Braniff says a first lock is like a first love. You never forget it.
When you see someone else drive in, oh sure, it's 87 feet wide and that's all great or whatever, but when you're driving in, it's only like 35 feet wide, you'd swear, so.
Braniff should know a bit about tight squeezes. She hails from a crowded little state back east that feeds its citizens into things called rotaries.
I was born and grew up in Sturbridge, Massachusetts.
We make our way back down the river, heading for the Pacific, and re-enter the Columbia Gorge. In this stretch of the Columbia, hazards can emerge out of thin air.
So if you're an outdoors person, this is the place to be.
Paradise.
Yeah.
Les Crichton, a native of South Africa, blew into town in the early 80s. That's when Hood River, with its incredible gorge-driven winds, became an international windsurfing mecca.
The windsurfing phenomenon revived the town. The industry brings in as many dollars as